We live in interesting times. The world is on fire. So much anger, so much violence, so much suffering. As I contemplated this for this last week, I was trying to come up with a way for us to live in the world and still be free of all of that anger and suffering. I live in Portland at the moment, and a few weeks ago they had two groups clash in the streets. There were the Proud Boys, who are basically fascist, and there was the Antifa, who were anti-fascist. And the energy on both sides was identical. Identical. It's like the more you try to push violence out of your life violently, you find violence. What you touch touches you. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. And what you focus on is what you tend to touch. And right now, the news is consumed with what sells. And what sells is all the things that make us unhappy. Self-righteous judgment, angry, condemning anyone that does not share our particular point of view, the dehumanizing of people and groups, and just violence. If you resolve to go out and kill all of the killers, then you have become that you're killing. So how do you deal with this? I was watching just a bit of a movie at the house I'm sharing the other night, and it had a particular scene in it that kind of grabbed me. It was a typical high school bullying movie, and these two bullies were beating up on this cripple boy, and the rest of the students just stood around and watched. Finally, one intervened and basically got his ass kicked. But he intervened. So I thought, well, gosh, if we intervene, aren't we then becoming part of the violence? So I'm kind of in a catch-22 here. So I kept looking at this. How do you deal with bullying? How do you deal with violence and still do the right thing? And I was expressing this to one of my students, Padma, and he says, well, have you thought about the Eightfold Path? Oh yeah, there is that. So I'm going to review the Eightfold Path for you in Buddhism. And the Eightfold Path is, first of all, is the right view. The right view in Buddhism is to be neither attracted nor repulsed. This is very difficult. To be neither attracted nor repulsed. When there is so much attraction and so much revulsion going on, this is a very difficult thing to do. But you have to have that right view, where you're paying attention to what's going on, but you're not actually attracted to or repulsed by any of it. You're coming from a steady point of mind, a point of view. And the second one is, I wrote these down because I didn't want to go the Eightfold Path and only mention 7 or something. First time I've used notes. The second one was resolve. What is your resolve? So you have a view, and you have your resolve. What is your purpose? The purpose in Buddhism is to alleviate suffering, to take care of the poor, the defenseless. Having the right resolve does not mean that you're into conflict. Again, I'm saying, neither attracted nor repulsed, but the right resolve. You're going to do the right thing that needs to be done, regardless of how you feel about your own personal safety. You simply do the right thing. If you do the right thing from a dharmic point of view, being neither attracted nor repulsed, but stopping a violent action, say people beating up on a handicapped person, to not do that, to not intervene, would be the wrong way. You have to do what's right. The third one is speech. We live in a society that for the last 30 years was based basically upon trash talk. We have a president that makes fun of people. He uses horrible phrases, horrible words. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can wound the soul. So watch your words. From my point of view, there's never an excuse for being mean, ever. There's never a reason to attack anyone because they don't agree with you. The only time you should ever attack anyone is to stop them from hurting others. That's the only time. You don't tell lies. You should just admit that it's your fault. Because it probably is. And really, is a lot of this stuff worth fighting for? Would you rather be happy, or would you rather be right? And in this case, in Buddhism, the right thing is to be happy. Just agree. You said this. Oh, did I? I'm so sorry. How simple is that? I don't remember that. But if you say so, then I really hope you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. That's the correct way. Admit it's your fault. There are no victims. There are no victims in enlightenment. If you believe that people are victims, then you ignore karma. There's karma for everything, and karma plays itself out. But karma can be overcome very quickly through right view, right resolve, and right speech. Tying them all together here. So we watch our words. Sometimes it's best to say nothing. Just be still and be quiet. Which then leads us to right conduct. The right conduct is what's right for the moment. As Buddhists, we are here to alleviate suffering. What have you done to alleviate suffering today? Did you do a few extra chores when it came around the house? Things that weren't even yours to do. Were you into selfless giving and selfless service? Buddhism. It's good that way. Third one is, the next one. The next one is sometimes overlooked in spiritual communities. And that's right livelihood. You need good livelihood. Money or funds provide you a buffer between you and the jagged edges of survival. And if you don't see how that works, just go down and look at some homeless people who are trapped in that world. They're trapped on the jagged edges of survival every day. Money also provides you options. The option to maybe go with your teacher to some power spot. To pay for a class that would make you more effective. These are options that aren't available to people who don't have funds. So right livelihood puts you in a position so that you can kind of build your power in these areas so that you can help others. Effort. It all kinds it all in. What are you doing with your effort? They all kind of tie together. Effort and mindfulness kind of take in the first 6 or so, I think. Mindfulness is just watching your mind. How does this work in today's world? If you see an injustice that's causing harm, then it's your duty to use right speech, which means that you're not coming across angrily. And maybe in the middle of all of that anger and outrage, maybe the right speech is just keeping your mouth shut, but being there and letting them know you're there. Defending the helpless. If you stand aside and let the helpless be hurt, then that's your karma, as if you were hurting them yourself, because you are, because you had a chance to stop it and you didn't. It doesn't mean that you have to get angry that the person that's doing it to the helpless person, but you must stop them. Otherwise, you're just as bad as they are. There's a difference between just stopping somebody and attacking them, although it may look the same. It may look exactly the same, but there's a difference. When a child pushes a mother to a point where the mother must discipline the child, if she says, like my mother did me, this is going to hurt me more than you, I never believed her. But as I became a parent, I saw what she meant. It really does hurt you more than it hurts them, but it's something that has to be done. But if you wait until it gets bad that you get angry, and then you punish the child, the little devil's finally getting what's coming to him, now you have fallen into child abuse. And there's a world of difference between child abuse and enforcing discipline. A world of difference. One is setting and keeping boundaries. The other is just lashing out. When you're watching television, Look at the programs that are there. People are taking great satisfaction at making fun of and demeaning anyone that doesn't have their point of view. They never bother to listen to anyone else. They're afraid of the word empathy because it might make them less violent. The less empathy they have, the more they can make people into nothing, just things to be enslaved or destroyed. We've had enough destruction. We've had enough enslavement. We've had enough mass murders. This simply has to stop. But you don't stop it with violence. You stop it with correct action, with correct conduct. When someone attacks you, back away. And if necessary, use the Aikido, where you just let them fly by you with all of their energy, but you're not there for them to hit. You've managed to get out of the way. And now they're just left with an empty force to hit against. This is a very angry world, no doubt. But I do want to point out one thing for sure, is that there's never been a time that I'm aware of that enlightenment is starting to make itself so easily had, so easily manifested as it is right now. My teacher told us, this has been 30 years ago, or more, that throughout human history there's always been about 9 to 10, maybe 12 enlightened beings on the planet at any one time. Sometimes they were in caves, sometimes they were in villages, sometimes they were like Christ walking around. But today, there's enlightened beings all over the place, and more are coming on all the time. And you need to figure out that this is also something you can do. You can become enlightened in this life, in these circumstances, because in spite of all of this conflict and turmoil and chaos that's going on around us, if we can find the peace within ourselves, we will become enlightened. Because all of that chaotic energy will, if you take it and you don't absorb it and don't take it in and lack it, attack it back, if you just pull it up and let it go. In my book, Anthologies for the Spiritual Aspirant, I wrote about a dream I had once. And I dreamt that I was in Sonoma, California, in the town square. And I was standing facing City Hall, and on my right were people who had torches and bullhorns and signs. And on the other were people who had the same. And it was clear that they were going to start fighting. I looked at the people that were with me, and there were only about 6 of us, I guess, 6 or 7. And we didn't say a word. We walked right down the center of that square, and we didn't look to the right, nor did we look to the left. If we had looked to the right, then the people on the left would have put us on that side. And same if we'd have looked to the one on the left. They were looking for something to make us one side or the other, and we gave them nothing. We walked in a steady pace to the center of the square, formed a circle, sat down, meditated, and together we went into samadhi. Being neither attracted nor repulsed. Going into the higher. Leaving aside the illusion, the dream of all of this violence, and finding perfection within ourselves. Seeking the highest, the best, enlightenment. Enlightenment manifested in that way. Most people did not understand what we were doing. Some of them were throwing tomatoes at us. It did not matter. It did not matter what they said or did. We were single-minded, being neither attracted nor repulsed, but in the very center of it, actively making a statement for enlightenment, forcing people to recognize that not everything is one side or the other. Which brings us up to the last one. The last one is right samadhi. And samadhi is the dissolution of the self. As long as you are fighting and pushing and doing all of these things, then even if you attain samadhi, it's going to be kind of corrupted a little bit. But right samadhi is pure, it's free. Some of you are having a little samadhi experience right now. The room is turning gold. That's a pretty good sign. So if we're neither attracted nor repulsed, how should we act? Well, first of all, you're mindful and you develop empathy. The ability to see where that other person is coming from. Maybe recognize what made them so angry. It could be something like a brain tumor, who knows? But try to understand them a little bit. Don't make them something that's different. Everything's part of you. So empathy is good. Once you have empathy, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. You most likely will not, because they're completely caught up in delusion, having no idea what the truth is. They're just fighting out. Empathy, and then you have compassion for them, because they're not enlightened, they're in suffering, they're in deep pain. They're acting out in anger and in violence. Only people who are insane do that. You act with selfless service. You're continually looking to do things that's correct. This evening we were setting up a little late. Some of my students came in and they just pushed me aside. They set it up selflessly. Selfless service for the Dharma. Working in soup kitchens, advocating for the poor. There's lots of things you can do of selfless service. Little acts of kindness are so appreciated in a world where acts of kindness happen so rarely. And yet, basically, everyone is kind of kind if you look at them. They may be different from you, but they are kind. They love their kids. But kindness is really a good hallmark. Selfless service, just looking for things to do. If you share a house, try to clean the whole house every day by yourself. It's contagious. People start doing it around you. But even if they don't, what part of selfless service don't you understand? It is selfless. And when it comes time to stopping violence, your last resort is to actually be violent yourself. But if you are violent, you must never do it out of anger, but only because it's necessary. To protect the innocent. You do your work with this idea in mind. You do your job as impeccably as you can. It's right livelihood. This is how you're expressing your power in the world. When I was a computer programmer, I strove every day to make my code a little bit more precise. I made sure that I documented inside the code what each action was, so that anyone that came behind me could follow it very easily. I wrote some very clean code. Not for myself, but for anyone coming after me that would need to look at it. Right action, right effort, right livelihood. They all tie together. It ties together in a way for you to live your life in the world, be of service in the world, make a change in the world for the better, and yet not get caught up in what's made the world the way it is and why it's like that. This is very hard for Americans to understand because we're not raised that way. We're raised in a capitalistic society that says, only the powerful are worthy of succeeding, and the weak are there just to be used and enslaved by the powerful. Capitalism. We don't seek that kind of power. We don't seek that kind of awareness. Christ taught, and many of the great masters taught, that help the poor. There's a saying about helping the poor: you can give a man a fish, feed him for the day, or you could teach him how to fish, and he'll feed himself for a lifetime. So there's a difference between just giving somebody something and walk away, or actually working for programs that will actually help them get out of that situation. And now, I would like for you to gently look in my direction. And I'm going to meditate intently. And just witness. I'm showing you something that you can do on your own. Good. Take a breath. I'm going to ask for some questions, but first, in order for us to do that, I need you to just take a second and think about your name so that you can think. So think about your name. Good. Any questions or comments? I've made a lot of really strange things, and I'm sure there's stuff that must be unclear. So if you have any questions. Yes.
We are teaching meditation and we have the young students.
Yeah.
So you talked about having empathy.
Yeah. If you're teaching, it's the fast path to enlightenment. Truly. One of the quickest ways to get into enlightenment is to push other people ahead of you. When you do that, you're always at the front of the line. But the minute you start pushing them aside or pushing them back, you're at the end of the line. So to teach is a very high thing to do. In just about any way, not just meditation, but it's right action. It's a good thing. You're helping others selflessly. If you're a teacher of meditation, you have to learn to open your heart. Because if you don't open your heart when you're teaching, the words that come out of your mouth are just useless. No matter how philosophically correct they are, no matter how perfect they sound, if your heart isn't open, there's nothing behind it. It's the same thing if you're playing music. You can play all the notes, hit them just right. But if you don't have your heart in it, it might as well be played by a player piano. It has no human qualities. It has no empathy. Empathy comes from seeing other people's points of view and say, you know, I think I did that once. Somebody talks about maybe their dog dying. I've had dogs die. I have empathy. And that empathy allows me to have compassion for them. Not to say words that mean nothing. Well, you know, the dog's always going to be better off in the afterlife. You know, that doesn't, no. They're hurting. And if you've had empathy and you understand that, you have great compassion. If a woman has been molested or raped, you somehow have to have empathy from her point of view of the devastation of what that does to them, how it wounds them so deeply. And if you don't have that empathy, how can you have compassion? And the only way you can have empathy is to open your heart to them. And is it painful? Sure it is. But it's pain that has to be taken so that you can reach what they need at the moment. So strive to try to open your heart to your students. Let them into your heart. Will they trash you? Will they run away from you? Will they say terrible things about you? Of course they will. Almost all of them will. But that doesn't matter because you're taking right action. You're taking the right conduct in the situation. And the pain that you experience from them is just something that you learn to move. Pretty soon you take that pain and you just move it a little higher, and it quits becoming pain and it starts becoming an awakening. And when you can take all of the anger and the outrage from the roaring mobs and all of the pain from all the people who are suffering divorces and death of a loved one and facing their own death, when you can take the pain of people who've lost their job and their families are having to move out of their homes and they're having to live in their cars and they can't even get a job because they don't have an address anymore. When you understand that, then you have compassion to do something for them that's meaningful. Not just give them a fish for the day, but try to figure out an advocacy group that could help these folks and become active in it. And as a teacher, you do that with your students, all of them. If you don't have love and empathy and compassion for your students, what are you teaching? You say, well, they'll just hurt me. Of course they will. Christ told his disciples, I send you out as sheep among the wolves. But it doesn't matter because you're focused on a higher self. You're focused on enlightenment. You're focused on helping other souls heal, become better and more stronger. Protecting them from those that are predatory and harming people just because they like to do that sort of thing. You have to show love to people that don't know how to love. You have to open your heart to people who don't open their hearts to you because they've been hurt and they're not going to open their heart. It hurts when they open their heart, but you have to open it to them. And you will feel their pain. And you will be okay with it because that pain is part of enlightenment. You're not taking the pain from them, you're just experiencing it. Now you have compassion. I do it to all of you. When I walk into a group, I try to hug everybody because I feel their pain. Sometimes you just need to be touched. and not in a sexual way. So as you open your hearts to your students, you'll start finding after a while that you don't let the instruction of the evening get in the way of the teaching. Sometimes you have to set the instruction aside to deal with a problem somebody's having, because it's so severe, any instruction wouldn't get past it. If they've lost a lover, you deal with that. If their pet died, you deal with that. Now, I'm talking about the negatives. Also, by the way, they're also experiencing some really good things. They're getting married, they're getting new jobs, life is great. You let that into your heart too. I mean, life isn't all about suffering. Life has beautiful moments, and that's what we try to bring out. It's what you try to bring out as a teacher with your students, is those moments of illumination that pick them up a little bit, make them laugh, find some joy. It's a tough job. Nobody will appreciate you. Nobody will understand you. Everything will be missaid about you. You'll be constantly attacked. And I cannot recommend that line of work enough. It is just the highest you can do, because it's selfless service. Does that help you at all? Okay. Did you have a question? Anyone? Yes.
Where is the line of helping? For example, if I'm helping somebody, it takes time, takes energy, or focus, or anything. But so many people who need help that I can spend all my lifetime, and then I don't have time for myself to rejuvenate or something.
Yeah.
How you would define that good way?
So if I'm understanding you right, if you're dealing with people's problems a lot, pretty soon you don't have time for yourself. Is that right? Is that kind of like that?
My duties as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I was raised a Christian, right? And that meant you're supposed to be Christ-like. And every so often, Christ would just say, I'm going away. And he would go away for 40 days and 40 nights. Nobody would know where he went. They just wait around for him to come back. He took some time. If you're giving and giving and giving, you better be pulling from a really high spot. Like if you've gone into samadhi, you can give endlessly. Up to a point. The body kind of gives out after a while. But still, even at that, you need to take time for yourself. I was talking to one of my enlightened friends who is doing an incredible job. My God, he's teaching all over the world. He has students everywhere. He's doing all of this stuff. And I told him, I said, you've got to take some time to yourself. You need to, just for a while, get a throwaway phone with a number that nobody has except for 2 people, and they only call you if it's a real emergency, like somebody's dying. Get away. Now here's another trick that I use in my compassion that helps me, is that I block out the sufferings of others when I'm not in a high state of mind. So when I leave this building and I walk out into the world, I close my heart and I open it only selectively. Otherwise I won't make it 20 feet out there without being flat on the ground. It's like your heart is like a little newborn baby, you know? And it's a cold winter day out there and it's flu season. So you take your little baby, you're going to go to the store and you wrap it up in a blanket, make sure that it's nice and warm, you're holding it close to you. You're walking down the street and this old drunk comes, yeah, that's a fine baby you got there, let me see that baby. No, I don't think so, right? But then maybe some nice grandfather or grandmother comes up and says, oh, you have a little baby, and you look at them and you say, yeah, would you like to see it? In other words, when you're in the world, you're careful who you show your heart to. Because people that don't understand will take the energy and just leave their anger and trash inside where that energy was. Now, in a meditation hall, it's completely different. Here it's different. But out in the world, I have to do right action. I have to be mindful. I have to be very mindful and have right conduct. So there's times that you have for yourself and there's times that you give, but your main thing is to give endlessly, your endless service, endless service. But every once in a while you have to do some endless service to your own body and to your own self. There has to be some downtime. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And you don't want to be dull. You want to be sharp. So if you feel yourself kind of getting weighted down and overwhelmed, step back, gather up yourself. Spend a weekend on the beach or on Hawaii or top of some mountain. Energize yourself and then come back. Bring something powerful with you when you come. It's important for you to judge yourself and not just give yourself so much that you just collapse, which is one of the things I watched my friend do for a while. He would just collapse. You've got to take some time. But you won't take too much time because you'll find that once you start teaching, there's nothing more you want to do. Take a few days off. Okay, I want to get back into teaching. I live for the moments I teach. And I can assure you, at soon to be 73, the only thing that's keeping me in this body is spreading the Dharma. Not my kids, not any belongings I have, not my friends. The only thing keeping me here is to spread the Dharma. And as you become a teacher, you'll start seeing that. It'll start resonating inside of you. There's a holiness to spreading the Dharma, especially in a Sangha where people are kind of on the same path. Now you've got something really well working for you. A Sangha is a group of friends who are on a similar path. We help each other. We support each other. We love each other. And yet we allow each other to have space so that they can build their own power when they can. When they fall down, we pick them up. But then we let them go. We don't just keep carrying them around on our back. Self-reliance is extremely important. As far as I know, and I might be mistaken on this, but I don't know of any devotees who have ever become enlightened. There have been devotees that their teacher kicked them out, and then they became enlightened. But if you're getting all of your energy from a teacher, then it's secondhand juice. So you need to get your own stuff going. But a teacher will pull you up to that spot. A teacher is always pushing you up to the precipice of enlightenment. And then when you start to run away, which everybody does, they stick their foot out and trip you. And then pretty soon you come up and one day you actually make the leap. And you go into samadhi all by yourself. And after that, you're toast. So yeah, sometimes you have to take a little break. If you're so exhausted you can't teach, what good are you doing that, you know? Build it up. That's why we have retreats and pilgrimages and things like that, to get out of our routine, to do something different. And it's also why a good teacher will sometimes just take some time off. But they usually don't take too much off, you know. A week, maybe. It's hard for me to be away from my students for more than a week. I Zoom with them on... fortunately, I don't have too many students. It's hard to study with me. I am Shiva. I have no structures except samadhi. So people stay around me for a while and then they go away and then they come back. You know, the good ones keep coming back. Yeah. Any other questions? Those are good questions. Yes?
I had questions about our samskaras and our really deep hang-ups that we have and seem to come up more intensely as we progress, and how to address those and get rid of them.
Well, I have about 50 answers. I'm trying to pick the correct one for you and for some other people in here. It's a good question. First of all, is when you realize that you've had a really bad past. Then maybe all you need to do is drop it. I keep telling this story to my students. They've heard it, you know, so many times. Oh, here he goes again. But you're new, so I get to tell it again, right? But there was a time I was at the family dinner table. Everybody was gathered, and I just took a dump in my pants. And I was so proud of myself. Just shit right there in my pants. But I was only a year old. Should I feel guilty about that? Now, if I did it when I was 20, that's a different matter. A whole different batch of effort. But what I'm saying, in the past, we've all done terrible, terrible things. In this life, I have done terrible, terrible things to people. You know? I look back on that and I think, boy, you know, I harmed people. I hurt people. I feel bad that that happened. But that's not me. I'm no longer a year old. I've evolved. And if you're no longer like that, then quit focusing on it. Focus on who you are right now. It's called perfecting your soul. It's called the dissolution of the self, dissolving all those old patterns into light. And when their ghosts come up or these feelings come up, I have my students do something kind of bizarre, in that I have them take it into their being and let it go right here. The nothing spot. demons, poltergeists, ghosts, terrible, horrible memories, patterns where I have throughout my life hurt, harmed people. Take them one at a time. Put them right in here, right between the heart and throat, right there. Into that space which is Brahma. This is what Shiva does. It takes all of that and puts it into Brahma. Brahma has nothing. The minute it becomes something, it's now Vishnu. Vishnu comes out of the emanations of Brahma. But Brahma has nothing, and anything you put into Brahma, it just dissolves. So your fears and your angers and your guilts and all the horrible things you've ever done in your life end at that moment. It ends right now. And you only keep them with you out of some sort of an egoic structure that says, well, if I'm not that, who am I? I've always been angry. I'm this way because I was molested by my father when I was 3. Until our mother caught us when I was 4, and then I was beaten the rest of my life. I'm such a victim. Is he doing it now? And the answer is no, he's dead. Well, then why are you even thinking about it? Let it go. It doesn't benefit you. The only thing it could benefit you is to let you have some compassion about people who have had that experience and to help them let go of it too. But to hang on to it is to completely redefine yourself in those old ways. So Christ had this really neat idea. He said, let's focus right here. My burden is easy. Give me your burdens, and we'll wash away all of your sins. And then he said, go and sin no more. So this evening, if you want, we'll just wash away your sins, but don't do it again. And quit resurrecting it from the dead. Quit identifying with it. That's not who you are right now. The person that's sitting in front of me has none of that going on in her life. I see someone who's potentially really compassionate and very loving and very caring, who does good things for people, who's honest, taking nothing that's not freely given, doing no harm. Protecting the innocent. Can you let it go? All of it? Now you have a problem, because your life has been based upon those guilts and shames and patterns. And those patterns are now gone. Who are you and how are you going to be? See, this is the issue. This is why it's difficult to work with me, because I don't give you any structures. That's why you need a teacher that gives you structures to put these things into. Projects and activities, trips, that helps you put this structure into this new energy into new structures. You start doing things like your job. You start doing the very best you can at it. You may be other people better than you, but you're always just doing the best you can. Like I did, writing the best code I could write. Not that other people would recognize me, but just because there's a power to that impeccability that bleeded over in the rest of my life. So as you quit identifying with your samskaras, who are you? The problem with samadhi is that you're falling, but you're not falling down, you're falling up. When you fall down, you know there's a bottom. You're going to hit that, maybe break some bones. It's going to be bad when you hit the bottom. But the bottom's there. But when you fall up, there is no bottom. When I studied with my teacher, we were supposed to meditate 90 minutes every morning. And I would set my alarm. I knew better than to hit the snooze. You just get up. It's part of your determination to get up. And I would get up out of bed, I would go in and I'd put on some coffee, and then I would go take a shower, and then I would come out and I would get my coffee, and I'd sit down in front of my meditation table and I'd put my coffee there. And I did my meditation for 90 minutes. The first time I did it, it didn't go well. I had thoughts the whole time. Oh gosh, kept looking at my clock, kept looking at my watch. Oh my gosh, my back hurts. Oh geez, when's this going to be over? Finally, 90 minutes later, I stood up and I looked at the meditation table and I said, that's not acceptable. And I sat down and did another 90 minutes. Quit making excuses. You have a hard time getting up. It's a hard time in this life sometimes. It's hard going to jobs. It's hard in a relationship, dealing with somebody else who's always nagging you about your flaws, trying to control, dominate, and manipulate you, and yet you're having such a great time. You know, life is hard. But I wasn't going to let that first 90 minutes of shit meditation be my statement toward enlightenment. I refused it. I sat down and made my body, I forced my body to sit there for another 90 minutes. And then just to make sure, I gave it an extra 5. And after that, I never had a problem. Sit down, do my 90 minutes. It's hard getting up in the morning, especially for people who aren't used to it. But it's a mental attitude. If you go to bed at night and you say, I am going to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, at 5:31 in the morning is when I'm going to wake up, and you set your alarm for 5:32, and see how many times you can hit that alarm before it goes off. You'll be able to do it within a day or two. Most likely. Some people a little longer. But it's just having the right attitude, putting in the right effort. So I know probably not what you wanted to hear, but it's tough. Why are you meditating in the first place? Why are you meditating? I think that's the first thing to ask. Why are you getting up to meditate? Are you meditating because you want enlightenment, because you want more spirit, because you want more grace, more compassion? Or are you meditating just to prove that you can meditate for 90 minutes? Or are you meditating because your teacher told you to and you really hate it? You don't like to do it at all. It's not going to do you any good in enlightenment with that attitude. This is up to you and how you make your choices on how you're approaching enlightenment. How you approach enlightenment in any way is your reflection of the refinement of your spirit. How you respect your teacher, support him, and do things for him without him even asking. How when somebody comes up and says something derogatory to you about your teacher, you say that's not allowed, and you turn your back. Turn your back on them. Let them sit with it. Keep your connection with your teacher like an optic fiber. Nothing gets in that way. Nothing. Not what people say, not what the press says, not what disgruntled students say. You focus totally upon the enlightenment. Keep it there. And that will be conveyed down to your students as you teach. But it starts with you and your teacher. And then when you teach, that will just be transmitted to them. Or you can bring them to me and I'll straighten them out. But that's only going to be good for another maybe 5.5 years. We have a limited time here. Okay, I'd like us to meditate on what it's like to have samadhi. And this is a piece of music called Sunrise by Zazen. It's one of my favorite pieces of music. And it starts out very dark, but it quickly starts moving up to where you can start seeing, like the highlights. There's get a little bit of highlight over the mountain range, but everything is still, black and white and shades of gray. There's no color. And then as it gets brighter and brighter, pretty soon things start to become a little colored, a little bit more and more and more, until there's this time right before the sun comes up where everything is just like daylight, and then the sun comes up. And the whole energy of the day changes from the night into the day. So this is sunrise. Take a breath. Relax. Every moment that you spend with enlightenment is precious beyond any gold or wealth. Because it's contagious. And it is your job to be absolutely infected with enlightenment so that you become contagious. It can happen. I know you've all made mistakes. I know you're maybe a little insecure. The ego is sometimes consumed with doubt. Doubt is the enemy of enlightenment. The only way you can overcome doubt is to just be around enlightenment and drink deeply. I would give anything I have, to spend one more night with my teacher. But lucky for me, I got infected by him. And he's in my heart. It's contagious. Always remember why you're teaching. For the awakening of others. And if you do it really right, your students will become more enlightened than you ever were. And then when you go, you'll be quickly forgotten because everybody will be looking at their lights. And you'll be free. So that's the plan. Good luck on you with your teaching. Love your students, but don't be afraid to discipline them. You should never feel good about disciplining or correcting a student. But a teacher who does not correct their students is not a teacher. It's like giving a spelling test and never grading the papers. So don't be afraid to call out bad conduct. Don't be afraid to stand up for those who are being hurt by other people's actions. Seek grace. And between these words that I'm speaking is where the really important stuff is taking place right now. For anybody whose heart's open. No matter where you are. So good luck on the Eightfold Path and on the beautiful way of teaching. Namaste.